diversity is its indispensable ingredient. Waterloo's students come from everywhere. Fully half of the graduate engineering students are international. And the University of Waterloo's domestic students are drawn from Canada's student population, one of the most diverse in the world. Canada is one of those countries that does diversity and inclusivity better than just about any other country in the world.
Blackface, and he's in a tight election.
The controversy erupted overnight, forcing Justin Trudeau to speak out and try to explain taking questions on board his campaign plane.
In 2001, when I was a teacher out in Vancouver, I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on.
This is Kerry Diotte in Edmonton, where we're at the World Diversity in Leadership Conference.
We all have value, right? That homogeneous singular leadership team, for example, they ended up that way for a reason. But it doesn't mean that they're not qualified, it doesn't mean that they don't have value and so forth. So one of the things that I raised, your question is so timely for many reasons. I've been hearing a lot from client groups about, the reverse racism. Oh, there's reverse racism. Oh, geez, there's so much reverse racism. If I hear that one more time, honestly, anyways.
Why is it so important to have diversity in leadership? Because this is all about leadership. What is important about that?
The most important thing is because we have so many different cultures and backgrounds of people that come through into workplaces, and everybody has their own unique gift of sharing and being able to contribute to society. And we need to see that it's not only one colored person that can do this, it's many people and many cultures can do this, and we need to start recognizing that we're all equals. There's no one better than the other.
As they were pointing out on the stage, you're missing out on a lot of talent if you're focused on one specific demographic. If you've got a more open concept to it, it just makes it that more viable. You're potentially having people that maybe are more talented than people that are in those existing positions. So
I think we're stronger together. And so what needs to happen? I think courageous conversations need to happen. So these conversations that are happening here today, we need to be having these conversations back in our workplaces, in the organizations that we've come from.
It's the right thing to do, but also finding it gives our society and our country tremendous strength. And that is social strength. I love living in a stable, diverse society.
Because I think that's generally how you become very biased, is you hear from the same people over and over again, and there's really no heterogeneity in terms of our opinions and the way we do things. And so I think it builds in also the ability to pivot in situations when you're so accustomed to doing things one way. Having that diversity will help build in the ability to transition when you have adversity, for example. So I think it's good to have that range of people coming from different backgrounds and culture to give their own perspective on how to overcome challenges.
Well, diversity, I believe, just coming from a personal human being, is that you learn more perspectives and it increases your self-awareness, right? So, for example, for myself, I'm a woman of color, and I have all these different intersectionality aspects, right, to myself. So when I'm going out and talking to other people, then it's really about getting diverse experiences. So for example, when I do training programs, I don't do it in the isolation piece, right? It's going around saying, okay, let's go to, the different intersectionality aspects and say, okay, what can we do to make this project better? So I know this is being used a lot. It's like having everybody at the table, but also actually including them in everything, right? So actually making them feel part of a bigger picture. And on a personal level, I've I faced discrimination. I felt, I faced racism. I felt all this stuff. So to me, when people have this openness around diversity, then it just makes it, I don't know, I guess it just makes the world just a better place. And just say, and I always tell people when I'm talking about this, if we can just understand we're all humans, treat other people like humans, it's that simple, right? And just really that, yeah.
There's been a lot of talk lately about systemic racism. Do you think Canada is systemically racist?
All the discriminations that we see on the rise, anti-Asian racism through the pandemic, are absolutely unacceptable.
In some areas, yes, I believe there is some systemic racism.
Is there any area you can point to specifically that we could change immediately?
That's a hard one to answer.
But over the past years, we've seen a rise in hate crimes, a rise in intolerance and racist acts.
I would say so, yes. I mean, being an interracial couple, I've definitely noticed that myself. Just things that I never quite would have thought that would be there, even in the building that my wife and I live in. People think that she's somebody completely different than what she is. They don't know she's a successful businesswoman like she is. And I attribute that because of her skin color.
If it's systemically racist, what in the system can we fix today? Is there anything you can point to?
Education, I think, goes a long ways. I come from an organization of about 1,800 people, and I can tell you from my own personal experience that there was not a lot of education there in that respect. It's a very, very kind of siloed group of people working in that industry, and there's not a lot of demographic in it, a lot of diversity in it. So.
Speaking of conversations, you hear a lot about systemic racism. Do you think that Canada is suffering from systemic racism?
Absolutely. I think we'd be naive to think it's not happening here.
Are there any areas that you can point to that we could change today? Because I think if you talk to any person, they're going to say, if there's something in the system that is racist, let's change it. So is there any area that you could point to specifically where we could make a change today?
A change today? That's a tough question. I mean, there are, I don't know what we can do today. I think it's more of a marathon than a sprint. But I really do believe it starts with having conversations like these.
Racist at the time, but now I recognize it was something racist to do.
Right. And you hear a lot of talk about Canada being systemically racist. Do you believe that's true?
I think in certain circumstances, yeah, that potentially how I would project that, yeah.
So if we've got things in our system which are systemically racist, is there anything you can point to that we could change immediately? Because I think most Canadians would say, if the system is racist, let's fix it.
I don't really know if there's a quick way to fix this problem, because I think it stems from generations of, people passing on their unconscious bias to their children and then grandchildren. So a lot of that is from their own background, and it really comes from homes, right? And how do you really change that? Because I have in-laws who are rural Albertans. They live in a very different community. They're exposed to very different things. So it's really hard for me to project my own beliefs on theirs because we have different experiences. So yeah, I don't know if there's a really quick fix to change that systemic racism. I think education is one thing, exposure to new experiences, to new culture, to new people. But that all takes time. So, and opportunities, right? Like I think about how often do rural Albertans get exposed to a different culture when the only ethnicity people that they see is the person running the grocery store or the gas station, right? Like that's the only exposure they get to diversity. One
of the things that people do talk about a lot is Canada. Are we systemically racist? Do you think that is true?
That's a tough one.
Many of the people I've talked to here say, yes, we are, and we need work. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talk about systemic racism, it's not, I always come from a place of it's not done intentionally. It's done on kind of what we've done, right? I mean, even for me, I'm in this realm, you know, for the last, I would say like 5 years type of thing. And the more I learn, the more I become discouraged, but then also with an understanding too of that we are where we're at. How are we going to change these systems, right? Because again, and I think it's really important not to shame or blame anybody. It's just from our perspectives of just saying, okay, this is where we're at, but that systemic racism, yeah, absolutely it is.
So just on that, if there's something in the system, I think most Canadians would say, if you can point to something in the system, let's change it. So is there anything you can point to that we can change today?
These are good questions. I really believe confident that it really starts with ourself. Again, I know it's hard to change systems and all these things, but I think again, I guess the question is how do you increase the awareness within ourselves, right? So for example, I have a self-growth mindset, and because I have these experiences around facing these things, and some people don't, it doesn't mean that they don't have, other things that have actually, been traumatized or things like that. But sometimes it's really hard to understand where people are coming from if you don't have those experiences. So the question, the $1 million question then is how do we change these systems, and how do we start with self? Because we're all part of this and we all need to change it. Like it's not, I was talking in my early presentation, it's just not the leaders that are responsible, and it's definitely not the underrepresented groups. It's all of us, and we all have a piece in this, right?
Okay, we interviewed several people at the conference, and one thing that they did agree on is that Canada is a systemically racist country. However, nobody seemed to be able to point to anything that we could change tomorrow so that would not be true.